As a parent, what would be closer to your heart than the education of your children? And it is therefore very easy to understand the mental torture most parents are going through. Because since March this year, our children have been at home. And with the end of the year fast approaching, it seems they have lost an entire academic year. The year 2020 never existed academically. And in recent weeks, we have seen a very determined effort by the government to try and get children back to school before the year is completely lost. Actually, it is clear that they have been under intense pressure to reopen schools. Indeed, there are those who expected that the president on Monday would fast track the reopening of schools, but it didn't happen. Indeed, the president did the very opposite and applied emergency brakes, saying that we needed to do more work, more preparation before reopening schools to ensure the absolute safety of our children, he said. On this show, I want us to explore and understand the struggle that the government is going through over the reopening of our schools. Because all over the world, politicians will always deliver polished speeches, carefully leaving out and avoiding the gory details. Let us start by identifying the sources of pressure for and against. Number one, the economy. We have quite a number of heavy investors into the education sector, and many of them took out loans from banks. And because many of them are well connected, and a few have even been known to finance political campaigns in the past, the government has no doubt felt the heat from these people to reopen schools like yesterday. Teachers are also major contributors to the economy. And right now, many private school teachers have been without an income since March. And let's not forget that there are numerous companies and businesses whose core business is supplying to schools. And many of these companies have had also to lay off many of their staff, if not all. Bottom line, the education sector is a very key area of our entire economy. There's also been considerable pressure on the government from what is happening elsewhere in the world, where schools have reopened. But the side that is winning so far are those who are against the reopening of schools for various reasons. Top on the list are promoters of the virus who feel that Kenya has fallen short in portraying just how serious this thing is. The country has not been as strict in its containment measures as they'd have liked it to be. And now, in their view, we want to send children back to crowded classrooms. These people fear that with children back to school, the entire population will relax and ignore containment measures. But the real heat in this back-to-school saga has been generated by parents on opposing sides of the economic divide. Folks, this is the crux of the problem. Because in Kenya, we have two types of parents. The kind of parents who will send their children to school tomorrow. If you announce it today, all they have to do is to write a check. And of course, on the other side, we have the parents who, if you announce schools will open next week or next month, they have to start scratching their heads on how to make that happen. And this second category are the majority. And for them, it is not viable to reopen schools before you have reopened the entire economy with no restrictions at all remaining. You know, unfortunately, we have major decision makers in government who believe that because primary school education in Kenya is supposed to be free, it is therefore very easy for these parents to get their children back to school. They don't need any money to do that. What? How some people will never understand. For starters, how will those kids get to school? They need transport, public transport, or a boda. That costs money. They will need packed lunch. That costs money. Each child will need a few basics, exercise books, pencils, etc., etc. That too costs money. So, how viable is it to reopen schools when most parents are struggling to put food on the table? Now, taking into consideration all these factors we have touched on, it is easy to see how this back-to-school issue can easily blow up in our faces. Let us not forget that we're in that situation where ordinary Kenyans have been pushed into a corner. They can't take any more. And you know, when somebody is in that situation, you don't expect them to respond reasonably. Indeed, you don't expect them to reason. Because when these same people were reasoning, they didn't want to hear about the deputy president's bid for the presidency in 2022. Now, these same people, at least some of them, are staunch supporters of the deputy president a few months down the line. When you're dealing with people with that kind of mindset, you can easily reopen schools and nobody turns up. You don't want to mess around with people who are unpredictable. Now, many on this channel will not understand what I'm talking about. They still have 3 straight meals a day. Maybe their account at the bank is not doing as well as it should be. But they're okay. At least they can afford bundles to take in this channel. Things are good when you compare the situation to that of the vast majority of Kenyans out there. How do you expect them to understand what I'm talking about? Even those who have gone through certain challenges, like divorces, breakup of families, will not understand. They will tell you, I too have gone through a lot. But the education of my little ones is paramount. How can such a person compare notes with the vast majority of Kenyans, whose paramount concern is the next meal, where it will come from? I have a feeling that it is this realization, more than anything else, that caused President Uhuru Kenyatta to apply emergency brakes when all indications suggested that it was full speed ahead. Indicators like teachers being asked to report back to their schools. You know, even the reporting back to school has issues because teachers are not coming in from another planet. Think of that teacher who is also a parent. And they have been doing odd jobs, kibarua, to put food on the table. Like plowing other people's shambas. So you ask them to report back to school. You can guess what their first thought will be. What will my children eat today? What will my children eat tomorrow? Bottom line, reopening schools is not a simple matter. It is very complicated. God help Kenya. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.